you guys ever go to the park and see a cute squirrel or something like that, a rabbit, some animal in the wild that thinks cute, you want to take home, just take care of it because it's adorable and stuff? Well, I'm here to tell you that that is not a good idea. Taking wild animals and try to tame them as pets. So I'm first going to talk about how it's not good for the animal. It has negative effects, both physically and mentally. How it's negative for the human as well. And so I'd like to begin by saying that most animals are taken from the wild and tamed by not prepared people. The animals are taken not because they want to, but because they're forced to. It's not the decision to be taken from the wild and be kept as pets in houses. So most animals could go all their lives without seeing a human and live happily, and they prefer not to be seen by humans. So most animals are taken, some physically and mentally. Unlike cats or dogs, most animals are not domesticated, and that's why they're called wild animals. So according to chimneyandlife.com, which just gives you facts about animals and things like that, so there's a common knowledge that there's historians and scientists that wolves have been domesticated for at least 10,000 years now. So they've been tamed for the right temperament, right size, and to be with humans. So they've been bred for many thousands of years to be with humans, so they can interact with us. Not wild animals, not like squirrels, raccoons, or like chimpanzees and stuff like that. So most animals suffer mentally too. They suffer from depression, frustration. So they suffer and frustration, depression, and anxiety sometimes. Most animals suffer for that because they're confined in small spaces, unlike the wild, which is they have unlimited ground to roam around. So they're just stuck in one house, seeing the same thing over and over again. And most of these animals, it's not healthy to have a routine for them, like we give these animals. Like they wake up, we give them their food, and it's not natural for them, and it just hurts them. Another thing that hurts them is a thing called habituation, which is when animals get used to things that they should not be getting used to. For example, most animals will find humans friendly if they live among them, like a raccoon or a rabbit, which in normally in the wild they would not. And because their instincts just take a part of them, and they just run away because they fear danger and stuff. And when animals suffer to habituation, they can't be released in the wild because they won't survive, and we're just hurting them since they can't take care of themselves because we give them their food, and they can't interact with people because most people don't have the budget or the experience to keep an animal. So most animals are either malnourished or just overfed. So that's the negative effects to the animals. So there's also negative effects to the humans that keep these wild animals. They suffer. Humans have been attacked by wild animals such as tigers, chimpanzees, raccoons, and there's a statistic where 75 deaths have occurred from wild animals from 1990 to 2011. There's not a lot, but still 75 people have died because of animals, because they have kept them even though they shouldn't have kept them. Another thing that's negative for humans is that it's illegal to keep wild animals in most states without having a license. So there's a fine up to $25,000, jail time, and community service. So we don't want to. We could just avoid that and just keep animals in the wild. Also, not only do they hurt physically, and we can actually see it, but they also hurt us from diseases they carry. Most wild animals have diseases that are harmful for humans, such as ringworm, salmonella, and other diseases. So, most of these animals are expensive to take care of through food and things they need. So it takes a whole chunk of your budget if you want to keep a wild animal that you don't know how to take care of to begin with. So food, you could be feeding the wrong thing to the animal. And just like it also tears up your stuff. Like we've seen videos of raccoons digging holes to people's houses, and I think it's all cute, but like it's really like expensive and damaging the person's property, and they have to fix it at the end of the day. Now this is a hole in the wall that just ruins the whole place. So in conclusion, if you do see a wild like animal, like sure it's cute, you can appreciate it from far away, but like don't try to take it home. It'll bite you, it'll fight back, and it's not good for the animal. Thank you.
Catherine, you're not, you just came in.
Yeah.
You missed the speech. All right, that doesn't help. That was the speech that you were going to do your oral evaluation on, so. All right, well, I'll just do the evaluation then. Your visualization of animals in the wild is kind of okay, but I'm not exactly sure who does this, how many animals does this happen to, frequent, you know, the frequency with which this is a situation. I think what you probably want to do is start with a story or an incident about somebody who did exactly what you're talking about. You mentioned, oh, you know, you see raccoons torn up somebody's house. I'm going, what raccoon? Whose house? Where did you hear about this? What, you know, like I used to say, you know, what comic book did you read this in? Not what comic book did you read this in, but tell us the story. You said, I read a story in People magazine about Bob Smith, who kept a raccoon for a pet for 3 years, and he thought it was all great until he came home one day and the raccoon had ripped apart his garbage disposal, opened his refrigerator, swallowed the dog, I don't know, whatever happened in this thing, and tell us a story about that kind of thing, and say, you know, and then say, and this is the kind of thing that happens when people try to turn a wild animal into a pet. You know, and today my goal is to try and discourage you from doing those kinds of things. Then find some research. I don't know how typical this kind of thing is. I mean, I've heard of people doing those kinds of things. I don't know anybody currently who has a wild animal. I remember a guy when I was in elementary school, he had a raccoon that he would take for a walk on a leash, you know. So it was, yeah, Ken Orbis, that was, I can remember his name. I don't remember his raccoon's name. You know, but it was kind of weird that people do those kinds of things. How often does this happen? You know, like I said, anything about this. And then you've got kind of a random series of things that you were warning us about, but they need to develop a little bit more. Here's why it's bad for the animal. That's perfectly fine. You know, animals they're wild animals, they need to be able to do a lot of things. There are problems if they can't do those kinds of things. It affects their behavior, it affects their health. That's good. But you got to find some data on that kind of thing. If an animal's kept in a cage, does it have a shorter lifespan? Is it likely to get sicker as a consequence? Then you mention, for instance, that it's potentially problematic for the person who keeps the animal, and you've got the hypothetical of, well, you know, your house gets torn up by, you know, and maybe you get the walls ruined. I'm going, okay, how likely is that going to be? You know, that's why you need one of those examples to help prove those kinds of things. Again, I think any data that tells us that people are doing these sorts of things, if you had a friend who kept a chipmunk or a squirrel or something like that, I know that there are stories about people who've kept larger animals. You mentioned tigers and chimpanzees and that sort of thing. And I'm sure that there's a story. We're not all Siegfried and Roy where we can keep the tigers in the backyard. And probably Roy is unhappy that they kept the tiger in the backyard. You guys know that story? I'm sorry. If you don't know that reference, I apologize. That's old news, I know. That probably happened when you were 3 and you don't have any memory of it.
Did he die from a tiger?
He didn't die, but he did get his face ripped up pretty good. But it was on stage, they're magicians. They worked at Vegas. They had a big stage show, that kind of thing, and it happened on stage. The tiger, one of the tigers in their show, went a little off and grabbed him, and so he was a thing, But that's a fairly well-known example. Like I said, that was 10 or 15 years ago. I forget how time passes. You were 5 at the time, maybe, so you don't really have any memory of that. But you got to have something that's going on. The delivery aspects, you do a pretty good job talking to us. You do an interesting thing. You comb your hair constantly with your fingers. You probably didn't realize that you're doing that. Yeah, so you have this tendency, and so that's a little bit of a distraction. Otherwise, I think you're doing a pretty good job. But there's just not really any research content in the speech. All right, thank you.